then Steve Ballmer got together, I am quite confident, not with his PR team. He got together with his attorneys and said, there seems to be like fraud going on here. There's a guy who I invested with who just pled guilty for 2 counts of wire fraud. And I really don't want to have another salary cap circumvention. I had one of those already in 2015. Don't want to do that again. I think I better come up with something a little more substantial to release. Can you help me? So the lawyer said, let's work on statement 2. Now, Nothing Personal is a big fan of statement 2s because statement 2s are always very telling. Statement 1s are fraught with emotion and quick with the trigger finger. Statement 2s is when you realize, I'm going to have to figure out a better way to explain that which I may or may not have done. So the statement 2 that came out yesterday afternoon while Pablo, Amin, and I were live on Levitard's YouTube, statement 2 was outstanding. I want to draw your attention to 2 parts of statement 2 because otherwise we would need a 4-hour show. There is nothing unusual or untoward. Word of the day alert. There is nothing unusual or untoward about team sponsors doing endorsement deals with players on the same team. Let me stop you there because they're referring to what I uncovered during the show live while taping the show. When I saw in the contract between Kawhi Leonard and Aspiration that a condition precedent to there not being a termination is Kawhi Leonard being on the Clippers. And I thought, you don't see that every day. And of course, there were Twitter sleuths and other such uninformed people on the internet saying, oh, that's wrong, David. This is very common. Let me digress and tell you, I may have gotten that wrong. You do a $25,000 appearance deal for the corner grocery store that happens to sponsor the 5th inning behind the plate local signage. I've seen it. It's true. The auto dealership on the corner of US 1 and 27. Yep, local. Give me a car. I'd like a car in Miami, please. Yep, I'm happy to do a commercial. Hey, can we use the Marlins marks? No, thank you. You'll have to give us more money for that. All right, I'll just use a blank uniform. Of course, there are players on the team who are approached by local sponsors who do deals. 100% common, nothing unusual. But folks, a $28 million sponsorship deal over 4 years, $7 million a year. I've had some famous players, some very famous players play for me. Nope, never had it, never seen it. Aspiration is not a local Los Angeles company. They were trying to save the world, for crying out loud. Their whole point in the Robert Downey Jr. commercial was clear. Their whole point and goal was zero. They were doing deals with the Red Sox, with the Clippers. They were raising money from around the world and spending money around the world. A local grocery store? Give me a break. There is no chance, and I am more than happy to say it stronger than anybody else, there is no chance that Steve Ballmer invested in a company $50 million of his money, and we know that happened. We have the documents. Pablo. There is no chance that Steve Ballmer made an investment into that company, sat next to the founder of that company who had done a $300 million sponsorship deal with the Clippers. They were like bosom buddies, like Hanks and Scolari sitting at a press conference. And Aspiration just looks around and they say, oh, I've got the perfect plan. This is an epiphany of all epiphanies. We don't need to talk to Steve Ballmer about it. Why would we? Let's sign Kawhi Leonard to a $28 million 4-year deal. Do you realize how absurd that is? I don't care if if they're convicted or they've pled guilty to fraud or it was a Ponzi scheme, whatever the case is with aspiration. In reality, do you think it's possible that the people at Aspiration did not say, we need a celebrity endorser. Let's think of the most famous person we can. Wait a minute, I got a guy. He plays for the Clippers. Oh, I think Steve Ballmer owns the Clippers because we're the biggest sponsor of the Clippers. But we don't need to talk to Steve Ballmer about it. Why would we? For Steve Ballmer to say that he had no idea that Kawhi Leonard was doing a $28 million endorsement, a no-show job as characterized by someone at Aspiration. And Steve Ballmer, who invested $50 million into the company only months before, had no idea. It belies all credibility. But the lawyers, they kept going with the statement. Because if I say there's nothing unusual or untoward about team sponsors doing endorsement deals with players on the same team, the lawyers would say that's a true statement. And I agree. That's a true statement. Let me give you another true statement that the Clippers released. Neither Steve nor the Clippers organization had any oversight of Kawhi's independent endorsement agreement with Aspiration. To say otherwise is flat out wrong. You don't think a lawyer wrote that? Let's examine the wording, please. Neither Steve nor the Clippers had oversight of Kawhi's endorsement agreement. Well, you got me there because there's no contractual privity. We showed it on the show. It's a contract between Aspiration and Kawhi Leonard. The are not mentioned in the contract other than under, hey, you better play for the Clippers if you want to get paid. But Steve Ballmer can absolutely legally and properly tell you in a statement that he had no oversight of the contract. He had no contractual privity to the contract. You can't have any oversight to it. But the word oversight is fascinating because it's so limiting. I wonder why the statement didn't say neither Steve nor the Clippers organization had any influence of Kawhi's independent endorsement agreement. That would be good. Had any knowledge of Kawhi's independent endorsement agreement. That would be good. Oversight? That's clear. That's lawyerly. Let me tell you what else they decided to say. The Clippers take NBA compliance extremely seriously, fully respect the league's rules, and welcome its investigation related to Aspiration. They don't welcome the investigation related to Ballmer. They welcome the investigation related to Aspiration, which, don't worry, NBA, the DOJ and the SEC got you covered. I think you ought to consider being slightly more worried about the league's investigation of you. And as for you taking compliance extremely seriously, I would like to remind you that Steve Ballmer himself, after buying the team in 2014, 1 year later was fined $250,000 when he pursued DeAndre Jordan. Ballmer said, we believed we were doing that the right way, and any circumvention was inadvertent. Well, thank God, because we'd hate to believe that the circumvention was purposeful. I always liked it when people committed. It covers all sorts of sins, doesn't it? That was inadvertent. Who knew? He told the Orange County Register at that time, in our effort to support our players in every way possible, we as an organization must be diligent in complying with the CBA. I understand that 10 years passes. People get tired. People lose their memory. I can't remember what we were talking about, but just pretend we're talking about the Clippers and Steve Ballmer and what they did 10 years ago versus what they did 7 years later. I assume that people remember that the Clippers got fined again when they were even going after Kawhi Leonard, when Doc Rivers made some comments and they were fined $50,000 for Doc Rivers' comments. I know you remember that, but the good news is that statement 2 wants you to make sure you know that the Clippers take NBA compliance extremely seriously.